The morning sun broke through the thick, grey clouds hanging stubbornly over the city, casting pale light on streets that had long forgotten the warmth of certainty. Corbin, wearing his patchwork clothes that seemed stitched from every color the world could offer, climbed atop the cracked fountain at the city center. His painted smile was not merely decoration, it was a banner, a challenge, a beacon. The crowd that had gathered was a sea of wary faces, eyes shadowed by fear and hope intertwined. But as Corbin opened his mouth to speak, it was not dread that filled the air, it was laughter. "Good people of the city," Corbin began, his voice ringing clear yet playful, "we stand on the brink of an end that never quite arrives. The world's clock ticks, tocks, and then pauses, like a cosmic comedian who's forgotten the punchline. But I say, if the universe won't finish the joke, then we will!" A ripple of laughter danced through the crowd, tentative at first, then swelling into a chorus that chased away the heaviness. Corbin's words were absurd, yet they carried the sharp edge of truth. The city, fractured and fearful, needed this moment, this defiant embrace of absurdity, as much as it needed air. Nearby, Luna paced the narrow alleys, her sharp eyes scanning groups gathered in hushed councils. Her practical clothes were dust-streaked, and her expression bore the weight of a leader who had seen too many fragile hopes shattered. Yet even she could not deny the shift that Corbin's laughter sparked. She moved quickly, negotiating truces between factions who eyed each other with suspicion, reminding them that their true enemy was the countdown ticking unseen, not each other. "We hold together," she whispered to a cluster of wary faces, "or we fall apart before the end even comes." Back at the city hall, Mayor Griggs leaned against the window, watching the joyous chaos below. The cynical lines of his face softened just a little as Corbin's voice carried upward, challenging the inevitability of their fate. Griggs had spent countless sleepless nights balancing the city's fragile order, and though part of him wanted to suppress this dangerous hope, another part, one he rarely admitted even to himself, felt a flicker of admiration. Perhaps, he thought, this jester was the city's only true leader. As the day progressed, Corbin's rally grew into a carnival of laughter and absurdity. Banners of ridiculous slogans fluttered in the breeze. Musicians played tunes that made even the most sullen toe tap. Children danced with painted faces, their laughter a bright thread weaving through the city's grey tapestry. The oppressive weight of fate seemed to lift, replaced by a collective breath held and then released in joyous rebellion. Corbin seized this energy. He climbed back atop the fountain as evening crept in, the sky a canvas of bruised purples and angry reds. "Tonight," he declared, "we laugh at the end of the world, not because it isn't terrifying, but because it is. Because hope is the most ridiculous joke fate can't silence. And as long as we laugh, the end stays postponed." The crowd erupted once more, voices raised not in despair, but in a chorus of defiance. But beneath the celebration, shadows stirred. The forces that governed fate had not forgotten. The Harbinger and his enforcers watched from beyond the veil of reality, their ticking eyes narrowing at this rebellion of laughter. Corbin's resolve was a challenge, an unpredictable variable in their cosmic equation. Yet for the city, for this moment, laughter was a shield and a sword. The jester's resolve had transformed from mere jest into a clarion call, a rebellion woven from absurdity and hope. The end might loom, but tonight the city lived. And it laughed. As the stars blinked uncertainly overhead, Corbin's painted smile stretched wider, not because he was unafraid, but because he chose to be brave. For in a world that dangled perpetually on the brink, sometimes the greatest act of courage was simply to laugh. And so the city held its breath, the joke continuing, the laughter echoing, and the end delayed once more. But how long could it last? That question hung in the night air, unanswered, as Corbin's eyes sparkled with the promise of more jokes to come. The city was holding its breath, and Corbin could feel it, a palpable tension woven through the air like an electric current. Standing on the edge of a rooftop, his patchwork clothes ruffling lightly in the cool evening breeze, He gazed out over the labyrinth of streets and buildings below. The sky was a bruised canvas of purples and oranges, the sun dipping below the horizon as if reluctant to leave this endless day behind. The usual cacophony of the city was subdued, replaced instead by the low murmur of whispered conversations and the occasional sharp clatter of shutters being closed in hurried preparation. Somewhere far off, a clock chimed a hollow, distant sound that seemed to echo the heartbeat of a city caught between hope and despair. Corbin's painted smile felt heavier tonight, a mask that no longer quite fit the weight of the moment. He thought back to the first joke he'd cracked, the one that had inadvertently delayed the apocalypse. It had been a joke aimed at the cosmic machinery itself, a reckless jab at the inevitability of doom. And yet, here they were, still standing, the end postponed once more. It was absurd, ridiculous even, but also strangely beautiful. As the twilight deepened, a narrow alleyway below caught his eye. There Luna moved with purposeful strides, her short cropped dark hair catching the fading light. She was a stark contrast to the city's desperation, a pillar of pragmatic strength. Corbin admired her, not only for her fierce loyalty, but for the way she grounded his flights of fancy with sharp realism. Luna was already deep in preparation, rallying the city's fractured factions, coaxing them into a fragile alliance against the looming cosmic threat. In the underground chambers she called home, maps were spread across tables, illuminated by the flickering glow of oil lamps. Her voice was steady, a beacon of resolve as she directed her compatriots with practiced authority. The factions were a motley assortment, survivors clinging to hope, those who had surrendered to despair, and others desperate for the apocalypse to finally sweep away their endless limbo. Luna's challenge was monumental, to forge unity from this disparate crowd, to keep the peace in a city teetering on the edge of chaos. Meanwhile, in his cramped office, Mayor Griggs wrestled with his own fears and ambitions. The walls were lined with faded posters, relics of countless false alarms and postponed ends. His face was creased with exhaustion, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. The mayor balanced precariously between cynicism and the desperate hope that Corbin's influence might hold the city together. The political game was as tense as the city's streets, with Griggs' advisors pushing for control and containment, while the populace's restlessness grew. The mayor knew that the coming days could make or break his legacy or shatter the fragile order he'd struggled to maintain. Amidst this turmoil, Corbin and Luna found a brief moment of quiet respite in a narrow alley. The muffled hum of the city's restless pulse surrounded them, a living testament to the fragile life hanging in the balance. Corbin's usual irreverent wit softened, replaced by a rare vulnerability as he confessed his doubts about the role fate had thrust upon him. Luna's piercing gaze softened, revealing a flicker of hope beneath her skepticism. They exchanged no grand speeches, only an unspoken understanding that whatever awaited them, they would face it together. It was a moment charged with tension and camaraderie, the calm before the inevitable storm. As night deepened, the city braced itself. The streets, once filled with wary resignation, now hummed with a quiet determination. Corbin's laughter, once a mere distraction, had become a rallying cry. Luna's steadfast leadership had woven a fragile tapestry of unity, and Mayor Griggs, for all his doubts, was preparing to navigate the political tempest to come. The cosmic showdown loomed closer, a surreal battle where wit would clash with inevitability, and laughter might just be the spark that kept the world alive. In that twilight hour, beneath a sky heavy with unspoken promises, the city waited poised on the edge of absurdity and hope. The end was near, yet somehow not quite yet. And so, as the first stars began to prick the evening veil, Corbin whispered to the night, "Let's see if the universe is ready to laugh this one off." The city held its breath. The joke was far from over. The air was thick with a strange stillness as I entered the chamber beneath the city, a place no one dared speak of in daylight, where the very fabric of time seemed to pulse with mechanical precision. The walls were lined with shifting shadows that flickered and twisted like living clocks, their silent ticking resonating in the hollow space. At the center, emerging from the darkness like a specter born of inevitability, stood the Harbinger. His form was a shifting mass of shadows, eyes glowing like twin ticking clocks, cold and unyielding. The weight of cosmic order pressed down on me, but beneath my painted smile, I felt the familiar spark of irreverence kindle within. So I said, bowing with a flourish that probably looked more desperate than graceful, "We meet at last, the keeper of doom's schedule. Care for a joke before the end." The Harbinger's voice was a grinding echo, formal and unyielding. "This is no place for frivolity, Jester. The countdown must be reset to preserve cosmic balance. Your antics disrupt the natural order." I grinned wider, the painted smile smeared slightly by nerves but undeterred. But isn't life itself a cosmic joke? A slapstick routine where the punchline is always just out of reach. What followed was no ordinary confrontation, but a surreal duel of words and wit. The chamber became an arena where humor clashed with fate's cold machinery. I volleyed jokes laced with cosmic puns, absurd observations on destiny, and sly digs at the bureaucracy of apocalypse management. The Harbinger countered with grim proclamations, quoting regulations etched in the stars, invoking the sacred schedules of destruction. Each retort echoed through the chamber, a twisted symphony of order versus chaos. Why did the universe cross the road? I quipped, to get to the other side of inevitability, but it tripped over your paperwork. The Harbinger's shadows flickered, a momentary hesitation. Luna's piercing gaze and Ezekiel's twinkling eyes watched from the sidelines, their silent support grounding me amid the cosmic tempest. I could feel the tension coiling tighter, the stakes beyond any earthly reckoning. Drawing on everything I had learned, the absurdity of fate, the resilience of hope, the power of laughter, I began to unravel the cold logic binding the Harbinger. I pointed out the contradictions, the cosmic loopholes, the humor hidden in the machinery of doom. If the apocalypse is scheduled like a train, what happens when the conductor starts laughing at the timetable? I asked, voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. For a moment, the ticking slowed, the shadows stilled. The Harbinger's form flickered, the unyielding mask cracking, just enough to reveal a flicker of something almost like amusement. Reluctantly, he nodded, conceding to the absurd truth that even cosmic order could be bent by a well-timed jest. Outside the chamber, the city held its breath as the countdown that had haunted them for so long finally ceased its relentless march. The apocalypse was postponed once again, not by power or force, but by laughter and hope. I stepped back, the weight of the jester prophet settling comfortably on my shoulders, knowing that the battle was won for now. Yet the game was far from over, and the cosmic dance of absurdity continued, ever unpredictable. And so, in the heart of limbo, beneath ticking shadows and whispered fate, I learned that sometimes the smallest joke can echo across the universe, defying the end with a grin. But what comes next? If laughter can delay the inevitable, how long can it hold the world in its fragile, hopeful grasp? The curtain has fallen on this act, but the play goes on, and I am ready to keep the audience laughing, no matter what the cosmic script says. The city breathed a weary sigh, as if it had been holding its breath for an eternity, and was just now daring to exhale. The great square, scarred by years of anticipation and disappointment, was alive again, not with celebration, but with a fragile pulse of something new. Corbin stood on the cracked fountain, his colorful patchwork clothes a splash of irreverent joy against the gray stone and tired faces gathered below. His painted smile caught the fading light of the sun, a beacon of absurdity and hope in a place where the end of the world had become an endless postponement. The crowd was a motley collection of souls, some skeptical, some desperate, others simply exhausted by the weight of waiting. Their eyes, shadowed by the collective dread of countless false endings, flickered now with something that resembled curiosity, or perhaps the tentative stirrings of hope. Corbin's voice, carried by the gentle evening breeze, wove through the square like a warm thread, stitching cracks in the city's weary heart. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice light but steady, "we have survived yet another day, and with it, the great cosmic joke continues. It seems the universe itself has a sense of humor, and if we must be part of the punchline, then so be it! But let us not wait with bated breath for the end that never quite arrives. Instead, let us laugh, dance, and live as if the joke is on the doom that haunts us." A ripple of tentative laughter spread through the crowd, hesitant at first, but growing stronger, more genuine. It was a sound foreign and yet familiar, a reminder that even in the shadow of oblivion, life could still find a way to sparkle with meaning. Meanwhile, beneath the city's surface, in a dimly lit underground room cluttered with maps, plans, and the hum of distant machinery, Luna paced with restless energy. Her short cropped dark hair glinted under the flickering light as she spoke, her voice low and urgent. Corbin's words give them hope, but hope can be a fragile thing. The factions are restless, some worship him as a savior, others see him as a distraction from the inevitable. We must hold the peace, or this city will tear itself apart before the end ever comes. Corbin sat across from her, rubbing his painted hands together with a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Then we hold on to the laughter, Luna. If we can make them laugh, even for a moment, we give them a reason to stay." Her piercing gaze softened just a fraction. "And if laughter isn't enough?" He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling with resolve. "Then we make it more than laughter. We make it a rebellion." Elsewhere, in a cluttered room filled with stacks of tattered books and scattered papers, Ezekiel sat cross-legged, robes draped messily over his wild white hair. Candlelight flickered, casting dancing shadows as he spoke aloud, more to himself than to the visitors who occasionally stopped to listen. "The cosmos is a grand jest, you see. Fate, doom, and destiny all woven into a tapestry that mocks our attempts to find meaning. Yet within this absurdity lies the spark of hope. To laugh in the face of the end is to declare that life, no matter how fleeting, is worth every breath." Corbin listened, absorbing the philosopher's words like a balm to his weary soul. Ezekiel's insight deepened the jester's understanding of their plight. It was not simply about delaying the inevitable, but about embracing the absurd and finding meaning in the defiance itself. Meanwhile, in the city's ornate yet time-worn council chamber, Mayor Griggs sat heavily behind a polished desk, the weight of his office etched into every line of his worn face. His voice was grave as he addressed a small gathering of officials, the political fallout from the endless delay settling like a thick fog over their deliberations. "We find ourselves in uncharted territory," he admitted, fingers steepled thoughtfully. The citizens cling to Corbin's message, and while some see it as a beacon, others view it as a threat to order. "We must navigate this delicate balance carefully, lest we lose control entirely." A murmur of agreement and dissent rippled through the room. The mayor's cynicism was tempered by a reluctant acceptance. The apocalypse's postponement was no longer a mere delay, but a new reality they had to confront. Back in the square, as twilight deepened into night, Corbin's laughter rang out, clear and unyielding. Around him, the city's inhabitants found themselves drawn together by an invisible thread spun from shared uncertainty and fragile hope. The limbo they inhabited was no longer just a waiting room for doom, but a stage for resilience, for rebellion, for the stubborn refusal to succumb to despair. "We do not know what tomorrow holds," Corbin called out, voice buoyant and warm. "But tonight we laugh. Tonight we live. And in that laughter, we find the strength to face whatever comes next." The crowd erupted, a chorus of voices rising in unison, a symphony of defiance and hope echoing through the streets. The city, suspended between end and beginning, found its heart beating anew. Yet beneath the laughter, the question lingered, a quiet, persistent whisper that brushed against every soul. How long could hope endure in a world forever poised on the brink? And as the stars blinked awake overhead, the answer remained unwritten. a cosmic joke still unfolding in the shadow of the end. The city pulsed with an odd rhythm these days, a beat neither frantic nor still, but a steady, absurd heartbeat that echoed the strange new order Corbin had helped forge. Standing on the central square's makeshift stage, Corbin's patchwork clothes caught the waning sunlight, casting a kaleidoscope of colors over the crowd before him. His painted smile, once a mere costume, had become a beacon, a symbol of something far greater than mere jest. Ladies, gentlefolk, and cosmic eavesdroppers, Corbin began, voice ringing with practiced ease, "We are gathered here not to mourn the end, but to celebrate the never-ending wait. Because if the world insists on hanging in there, so shall we with laughter!" The crowd chuckled, a ripple growing into a wave of laughter that carried through the air, mingling with the distant hum of a city that refused to succumb to dread. Luna stood off to the side, arms crossed but eyes softened. Her sharp gaze swept the crowd, the divided factions, the hopeful, the fearful, and though her pragmatism urged caution, even she could not deny the power of Corbin's words. The city, this sprawling metropolis suspended in the limbo of its own apocalypse, was learning to live not despite the absurdity, but through it. Later, Corbin and Luna moved through the marketplace, the heart of the city's fragile life. Stalls brimmed with goods that seemed both ordinary and extraordinary in this perpetual pause. Vendors exchanged wary glances, city factions mingled in uneasy truces, and the scent of spiced bread mingled with the faint metallic tang of the ever-present countdown devices ticking somewhere beneath the streets. "You think they'll hold?" Corbin asked, voice low as they navigated the crowd. Luna's piercing gaze met his. "They have to, for now. But hope without action is a candle in the wind. We need more than jokes." Corbin smiled wryly. "Then I'll be the candle and the wind." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of laughter, a contagious, ringing sound that pulled them toward a small park. There Ezekiel sat cross-legged, surrounded by a gathering of children and adults alike. His wild white hair seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight, and his voice danced between cosmic absurdities and profound truths. Imagine Ezekiel was saying that the universe is a joke, an elaborate prank played by forces beyond our reckoning. But the punchline, we get to laugh too. That's the real rebellion, a child giggled. Corbin leaned forward, catching the twinkle in Ezekiel's eyes. "And here I thought I was the only one with a cosmic sense of humor." "You're not alone," Ezekiel replied, "but humor is only part of the story. It's hope, a ridiculous, stubborn hope that keeps the punchline alive." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the city, Mayor Griggs watched from his office window. His fingers tapped nervously on the worn wooden desk, eyes tracing the streets alive with cautious optimism. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon him. Yet even the cynical mayor found himself caught in the tide of change Corbin had stirred. A new order, he muttered to himself, one built on absurdity and hope. The city was far from healed. Factions still whispered, fear still lingered at the edges, and the machinery of fate ticked relentlessly beneath their feet. But for the first time in what felt like forever, the people did not cower at the brink of the end. They laughed, they hoped, and in that laughter they found a fragile peace. Corbin returned to the stage that night, the stars above twinkling in cosmic irony. He raised his voice, a clarion call to all who would listen. "We don't know what tomorrow holds. Maybe the end will come, maybe it won't. But as long as we breathe, as long as we laugh, the story isn't finished. And neither are we." A cheer erupted, raw and full of life. Somewhere deep in the cosmic machinery, gears ground to a halt, if only for a moment. The city, wrapped in its new order of absurdity, held its breath and laughed. And in that laughter, hope blossomed bittersweet, unyielding, eternal. As the crowd dispersed, Luna approached Corbin. "You realize, don't you? This isn't just a role. You read the heartbeat of this city now." Corbin's eyes sparkled beneath the painted smile. "Then I guess I better keep the jokes coming." And so, the jester prophet stood firm, a colorful beacon in a city suspended between doom and hope, between absurdity and meaning. The end remained postponed, but a new beginning flickered, one born of laughter, rebellion, and the stubborn joy of being alive. The story was far from over, and Corbin intended to make sure of it. The future was uncertain, the cosmic joke ongoing, but in that uncertainty lay possibility. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough. The night deepened. Somewhere beyond the stars, the universe chuckled quietly, and the city laughed with it, a new order of absurdity rising from the ashes of fear. The city was quiet in a way that felt different from the usual hush before the storm. It wasn't silence born of fear this time, but of something softer, a tentative peace. From the highest rooftop overlooking the central square, I watched the sun bleed its last colors into the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple that seemed to set the entire city aflame in a gentle glow. Around me, the crowd gathered, faces illuminated by the fading light, shadows mingling with the warmth of hope that I never thought would find a foothold here. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the days that had led to this moment. 20 days, each one a step along a road paved with absurdity and laughter, dread and defiance. The apocalypse had been postponed again indefinitely, it seemed, and somewhere deep inside, I realized that this was no longer just a delay. It was a new beginning wrapped in a cosmic joke only we were privy to. Friends, I began, my voice carrying across the square, we have become the punchline in the universe's grandest joke. But perhaps, just perhaps, the joke is on the apocalypse itself. The crowd stirred, some chuckling, others exchanging glances filled with cautious optimism. For every time the end has been promised and denied, we have laughed back. For every shadow that loomed, we have sparked a light. And in that laughter, in that stubborn hope, we find our rebellion. Luna stood off to the side, her piercing gaze sweeping over the crowd. She was the anchor to my drifting thoughts, the pragmatist to my dreamer. When our eyes met, she gave a small nod, the first sign of encouragement I'd seen from her in days. It was enough. Hope was not blind. It was wary, calculating, but alive. After the crowd dispersed, Luna and I wandered the dimming streets, the distant murmur of conversations weaving through the cool evening air. "You really believe this can last?" she asked, voice low, tinged with skepticism but also something softer, faith perhaps. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I believe we can keep laughing, and as long as we do, the end stays just out of reach." She sighed, her breath visible in the cooling air. "Then we'll keep the city safe, keep the peace fragile but intact." Together. Our footsteps echoed softly, the city's heartbeat steady beneath our resolve. Meanwhile, underground in a small chamber lit by flickering flames, Ezekiel spun tales of cosmic absurdity to a small gathering. His wild white hair caught the firelight as his eyes twinkled with mischief and wisdom. "The universe," he said, "is the greatest comedian, and we are its favorite audience. Every delay, every twist, is a setup for the next laugh." Laughter bubbled up among the group, fragile but fierce, like sparks in the dark. His words wrapped around us, a balm and a challenge. At the far edge of the city, shrouded in shadows that seemed to ripple and shift, the harbinger stood silent. His eyes, like ticking clocks, observed the scene with a mixture of cold calculation and something almost like reluctant respect. The machinery of fate had been thwarted, not destroyed, but delayed, and perhaps forever changed. The cosmic order had met its match in the resilience of human spirit and the irrepressible power of laughter. He turned away slowly, his form dissolving into the night, a promise and a warning lingering in his absence. Back in the heart of the city, as darkness settled and stars blinked awake, I sat alone on the rooftop. The painted smile on my face was no longer a mask but a statement. In this endless limbo, I had found purpose not as a herald of doom, but as a bearer of absurd joy. A jester prophet whose weapon was laughter and whose armor was hope. The world might still end someday, or it might not. But until that day we would laugh, we would live, and in that laughter we would find our defiance. The night wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying with it the sound of distant laughter, a sound that would not be silenced. And so the city waited, poised on the edge of forever, cradled by the cosmic humor that bound us all. The end could come tomorrow, or the day after, or never at all. But as long as we held on to the ridiculous, the hopeful, the absurd, we were alive. More than alive, we were free. And that, I thought, was the greatest joke of all. What do you get when you cross the end of the world with a jester? I had asked once, long ago, on a street corner where the shadows seemed thicker than usual. I don't know, a child had whispered, eyes wide. A punchline that never lands. But perhaps, I thought now, the punchline was exactly where we needed to be. Because in laughter, we find our strength, in absurdity, our meaning, and in hope, the stubborn refusal to let the world end quietly. The city breathed around me, alive and enduring, a testament to the cosmic joke that was our life. And as the stars winked knowingly overhead, I smiled, not just painted on my face, but deep within my soul. The end was never coming today, and that was worth celebrating.